What's going on? Welcome into Bills Chat Live. I am Josh McCarty. With me tonight, as always, is Luka. Luka, we weren't sure if we were going to be back this week, but Josh Allen, Tre'Davious White, and Cole Bishop did their thing, and here we are. How you feeling?
The taste of victory, especially on the road, something we were told was borderline impossible, I thought, in these NFL playoffs, especially for the Bills. It feels good, tastes good. The air is cleaner this week. I love that the narrative shift happened instantaneously, where it's now even, the biggest of haters are at least giving the tip of the cap. And it's no longer, well, he still has to make that deep run and stuff, which is still kind of in there. But I will add the surprise that came from that game and that win. Now that we're sitting here on Wednesday and we can give a brief thought to that, is I don't even feel like we're seeing that narrative still play out as much as I expected. Your Nick Wrights, your Ryan Clarks, your individuals that made that almost their own one and only talking point about the Bills if that game came up. They're kind of letting that go wayside, and you're seeing the other people, the other cream rise to the top. That is people just acknowledging that it's on the thought of that being solely on Josh Allen's shoulders is unfair. But then again, even if it is on Josh Allen's shoulders, you get the performance you get in Jacksonville. So it's like that performance and that game itself seemed to have gone so perfectly towards, or I should say against those narratives, that ultimately now we're sitting here and it's like, I imagine the happiest person in the building is Josh Allen, because he doesn't have to hear that drum just beat in his ear day after day. And I would like to believe that maybe that weight off his shoulder, it might even elevate him to a level that we can't even experience that. And I'm praying for that, because they're going to need it all against a tough Denver team. That said, I'm feeling pretty good about this one, Josh.
Caleb in the house tonight. He's a Chiefs fan, but he's always in the house. We appreciate him. Ismail is here. It is interesting. I'm seeing a lot of Chiefs fans that are backing the Bills this week. I guess, the rivalry between Chiefs and Broncos, I'm sure, is a little stronger. And from a Chiefs fan standpoint, like, why would you even hate the Bills? I mean, we're the team that always kind of like, hey, go ahead, go to the Super Bowl. Get right past us. All right, Luka, stop me if you've heard this before, but this week the Bills play a game against a team that on paper has a better roster than the Bills. They're somewhat offended that the Bills opened up as a favorite, although the betting market has made that go back and forth as the week has gone on. The one advantage the Bills have is that they have a proven quarterback and they have a young, shaky quarterback. I feel like we could just replay the show from last week and just, get AI or Grok or whoever to go in there and just replace all Jaguars with Broncos and Trevor Lawrence with Bo Nix and be good.
I will say, having conversations with friends and stuff and just kind of thinking over the matchup, it is really funny when you look at this upcoming game and your thoughts are almost identical. But then even on top of it, I respect the Denver D a lot, but I don't look at them as, we'll call it freakishly as athletic compared to the Jags. I look at the Broncos offense, very efficient, run by an offensive coach, of course, in Sean Payton, who's, he's more proven, of course, but then the quarterback is maybe not even as gifted as a Trevor Lawrence. And then the run game isn't quite as threatening as an ETN and Tootin, the rookie out of Virginia Tech. So it's, they definitely would have a better secondary, of course, with reigning defensive player of the year, Patrick Surtain, being the crown jewel of it all. But even then, it's not exactly as dominant as you would expect with a Pat Surtain out there. And it truly does kind of feel like the keys to the game, the thoughts as to where hopefully the Bills can win, this and that. It feels similar to me. And like, I laugh because this matchup to me also even screams something when people talk about certain stats, like, number one rush D, number two rush D, things like that. And I believe it's being brought up that the Broncos currently statistically are the number two rush defense as we go into this week. And I just go, well, yeah, you win as many games as you do, and the game script just naturally tells people to go away from the run. And once again, as similar to we talked to the Jags, which shout out to the Jags, they did hold up their end in the run defending game. They were proven to be legitimate. I would say the Broncos feel a little bit more Fugazi like, just because I look at the Jags and it's like, at least they did have the size and ability, it felt like, to maybe shut down the number one rush attack being the Bills. When you look at the Broncos, and maybe we could even start there, it's like they're a little bit smaller and things like that, where they just want you to get away from that run script. And most teams do, just because they can then start getting ahead, and or they have certain games as well that they just ground you out until Bo Nix turned it on in the fourth quarter randomly, and you were, next thing you know, you're in a shootout. So you just had to keep matching points for points. So it's an interesting dynamic that you're absolutely spot on. Just rinse and repeat the thoughts as to what you felt like the Bills could do last week going into this game. And it does feel like the strengths and weaknesses of the Broncos are similar-ish to what we felt the Jags were going into that one.
So we have a couple questions in chat that are kind of around the same topic. We have Roy Collins asking what our thoughts are on who might be elevated for this game. And then we have Nico saying, with missing Gabe and Shavers, that's the reason we lose. We have bigger issues. What do you thought? Let's start there. Let's start with, I think it's all connected. We'll start with Roy Collins' question, because I do think it's pretty straightforward. Right now, the Bills have 2 open roster spots. They put Gabe Davis and Tyrell Shavers on IR this week. Both of them tore their ACLs in the Jacksonville game. My expectation is Curtis Samuel, who's been a full participant in practice the last 2 days, is going to be added to the active roster, and that'll give the Bills 4 wide receivers on their active roster. Beyond that, then it's kind of up in the air. Ed Oliver has been practicing this week. He's still limited, deferring to guys like Thigh Doctor and banged up Bills. They'd be pretty surprised if he was able to play this week. It seems more like a 2-week ramp up. And then I would have thought that Damar Hamlin would have made a lot of sense, because he's been practicing in full. But Thigh Doctor did mention that they showed pictures at practice, and with him not wearing a harness, it leads him to believe that maybe he's not quite ready enough to be activated. So I think a lot of it, Roy, will depend on what they do with that open roster spot. Until we know that, it's really hard to project. But here's what I think we do know. We do know that Ty Johnson seems like he's very much on the outside looking in this week. So one of those elevations is going to have to be Frank Gore Jr. The other one I think is pretty straightforward. It's Mecole Hardman. Now, you could add Mecole Hardman to the active roster and elevate somebody else if Damar Hamlin's not able to go. But I think Mecole Hardman, Luka, is important in the sense that he can take some of the return duties off of Shakir, who now is going to be playing as large of a snap share as he had all season in, oh, by the way, really thin air.
Yeah, add the little thin air at Mile High kind of caveat to this all. I like I don't like the situation that the Bills are in. No one does. But if you want to try to figure out the glass half full side of everything, now you are, going to your last point first. You are finding yourself in a position where Mecole Hardman's going to be on this game day roster. It'd be shocking if he's not. If they went with Wilkerson, for instance, who they just brought in, that would be crazy. But it's you elevate him, and as you said, the return aspect of that all, and being the returner and stuff, that will intrigue me in the sense of, as you said, allow Shakir to be truly dedicated to just playing his receiver position. And then, for instance, last week we even saw a little bit, I think some of the things you could look back on the season and hear us talk about, and hear many people talk about, is why doesn't it feel like Shakir gets downfield as much as we would like to see him, or we had seen him in years past? And we saw that last week. We saw him come up with a lot of trust balls on, key third downs, or even just key moments where Josh Allen wasn't finding anything, and he saw Shakir a little bit, over the middle, 10 yards down the field, whatever it was. I love that. I think Shakir can absolutely feed in that. There was the 3rd and 6, I believe it was, in the Jags game, even on the bubble screen, where you just, again, see how slippery and smooth Shakir is. As long as you get him the ball, get him upfield, you need to make sure he's as healthy as humanly possible right now for the offensive side of things. And you can't be wasting any sort of energy, it feels like, in the return game whatsoever. So Mecole coming in is going to be big. I will say, just the injury stuff in general, it's pretty remarkable to see both the number of significant injuries that the Bills are dealing with right now, in the sense of just they keep adding up, but then at the same time, I find myself sitting here going, man, it does suck. We don't have Ty Johnson. We lose 2 receivers. All of these things we've been discussing, and yet it's not killing my confidence in this team's ability to do anything. And I don't know what it is about that, but it feels great in a weird way that it's like, yeah, we're down to 3 active receivers on the roster right now. And yet we know where the path is eventually for this, that position group. We know your Ty Johnson replacement is Frank Gore Jr., who even did get some snaps last week and showed that he can, if needed and called upon, will do whatever the task is that he's called upon for. It's just strange to sit here and go, yep, we're just going to roll into Denver and be this team and do our business. I don't look at this as just being another kind of shrug, sigh, and being a problem until proven otherwise. When you have certain individuals out there, obviously highlighted by number 17, I don't mean it can fully disguise the issues with everything, but I just trust the staff. I trust the personnel that they have there, and they're doing their absolute best with all of it, that you're going to get them at their best in these moments, because what we saw last game for 60 minutes was truly that. You had small people playing big. And that doesn't necessarily mean physically small. That just means, your 47th guy on the roster is stepping up and making an impact when he's called upon. And that's significant. That's coaching. That's culture. That's everything about that. You need everyone understanding their job, what they need to do, and getting over the finish line by doing their job accordingly. So as crushing as it could feel about having these injuries, I really do just have this mentality of, let's just move forward with what we got. And I feel pretty good about it, because at least the key individuals, the people that will have the ball in their hands when the game matters the most, that guy is around, and those guys will be around for now. And that feels great to me.
All right. So Nico and Sam, and there was one other one in there. Roy, I think maybe Roy Collins. I'm going to get to all your questions here, very rapid fire style. So we'll start with where Nico was. If missing Gabe and Shavers is the reason why we might lose, we might have bigger issues. I do agree. I mean, those guys added a lot to the blocking game for sure. And I thought Shavers was starting to come on as a receiver, but it's a little bit disingenuous to sit here and be like, well, the Bills wide receiver core is bad. They don't scare anybody. Oh no, we've lost 2 of those guys. Now we're not going to be able to win. So that's kind of where I'm at. Then we have another Nico. Who would you rather have next to Bishop, Hamlin or Lewis? I do think there's 3 options there. Actually, 4 options, Luka. If Hamlin can play, he's an option. I do think Jordan Hancock getting a full week of game prep could look different than Jordan Hancock being thrown into the fire. Cam Lewis is kind of the safe play. And that, to kind of go back to Roy Collins' point, that's where I'd maybe expect them to elevate Mecole Hardman to the roster. And then maybe they elevate somebody like a Takori Couch to be a backup nickel in this game and let Cam Lewis focus on safety. The other option would be if they want to go with someone like a Darnell Savage. My money right now is on Cam Lewis. I think he's kind of the trusted hand. But I'm not going to be surprised I think Savage would probably surprise me, but I wouldn't be surprised at Hancock, Hamlin, or Lewis. How about you, Luka?
My betting favorite for this would be Cam Lewis. I would, and for all of intents and purposes, that is what I would prefer to see as well. Cam Lewis getting in there just as a trusted body to start the game and do the things that it is. No disrespect to Hancock, for instance. Hancock, as we said in our podcast earlier this week, it's just a rookie. There's a lot that goes on when it comes to a McDermott defense in general, especially highlighted by the safety position. There's just a lot that you need to manage. And it's something that's very new to an individual like Hancock, when I believe personally the gap between what is called upon, especially on the defensive side, from college differentiates from the NFL. It's a big gap. I mean, case in point, completely kind of off topic, but on topic as well. New Heights podcast, Jameis Winston was on today, and he talked about his welcome to the NFL moment where he had never seen 2-man in his life until that moment and didn't expect it on his first NFL pass, which then the corner bit it underneath, took it to the house. So his first NFL pass was a touchdown. It was a pick six. But he talked about how that was something he never saw in college. He would never see that in college. No one would ever call that against him in college. And it's like, this is the NFL. And it's, that example there just like when you go from college to the NFL, it's a whole nother game. And there's a lot more that goes on, and it's super complex. And especially with the McDermott defense now in the playoffs, this isn't regular season defense where McDermott might even like let up, go a little bit more base, just let the rookie adjust. It's like, no, you have to do the job I'm asking you to do. Babich and McDermott are telling you to disguise coverages here, understand the rules and assignments, whether it's the underneath receivers on your side, whatever. It's just a lot. You want a Cam Lewis back there. It wouldn't necessarily overly surprise me before I get back to you if I see a Savage in there, only because it does feel like we hear about Savage every once in a while, that they've liked him for a couple years now. So if he understands the defense enough, which is the caveat to this, I don't think I'd be overly surprised by that elevation, but time will tell on kind of where that goes. I just betting favorite Cam Lewis to fill that spot going into the game.
I think I agree, because you saw Cole Bishop really come on when Jordan Poyer went in for Taylor Rapp, and there was less concern about what the other guy was doing. And the way Hancock played last week, you could kind of see where maybe Cole Bishop might dip into some of those old bad habits if he was out there again. Sam says, do you think the Bills will lean into the tight ends more this game and get them involved more in the passing game with wide receiver injuries? Absolutely, Sam. And I think the ironic thing about this is that might be the best way to attack the Broncos anyway. They have Pat Surtain, who can erase almost any receiver in the sport. And Ben Albright has been saying that he wouldn't be surprised to see Surtain even line up on Kincaid in certain scenarios. But I think that coming out in heavy personnel where you have Knox, you have Kincaid, you have Hawes, even have Gilliam out there, all those guys can get out and catch passes. The running backs can get out and catch passes. You really put the defense in a bind. And unlike Jacksonville, this is a small defensive line. The Bills really outweigh them across the board pretty heavily. So I think that's definitely a way that the Bills will look to attack the Broncos. One player that doesn't start for the Broncos that I know Luka loved up in the draft season is Jahdae Barron. He's kind of a moving chess piece joker for their defense. I do think if the Bills do get cute and start throwing the ball to tight ends and running backs, we'll see Barron out there because he has the athletic skill set to match up with those guys. They have a very good defensive personnel grouping. But no, to your point, Sam, I would not be surprised at all if this was a heavy tight end game. All right, Luka. I think my biggest concern about this matchup right now is the logistics, because just from a matchup standpoint, I do think I'm more comfortable with this opponent than I was Jacksonville. Jacksonville was riding hot. They had won in Denver. If that matters, I don't know that it does, but I think Jacksonville looked to have the more dangerous, consistent offense down the stretch. I think Jacksonville has the more athletic defense, but when I look at the logistics, that's where I get a little bit nervous. The Bills are going in on 6 days rest. The Broncos have had a week off because they got the bye. The Bills injury report is like a Christmas list right now. It's just boom, 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 boom. And there's no excuses there. I get it. Like the Niners lost George Kittle. They don't have Bosa. They're just now getting back Fred Warner. They don't have Pearsall. They don't have Ayuk, and they're still pushing on. So nobody's going to feel sorry for you, but that is the reality of what's going on with the Bills. Is they are dipping down low into their depth chart at several positions. Those logistics bother me, and then the aspect of the thin air, and if this is a tight game in the fourth quarter, and you factor in the thin air plus the 6 day rest versus week and a half off or 2 weeks off, will the Bills wear down? So there's things there that bother me, but outside of the logistics, I feel a lot better about the Bills against these Broncos than I did about the Jaguars. I have all the confidence in the world in McDermott and Babich to come up with ways to confuse Knicks. I don't think the Broncos are going to be able to run the ball as effectively as the Jaguars did with Travis Etienne. Their running game has gone way downhill since J.K. Dobbins has gone out. I do think Jaleel McLaughlin is somebody to keep an eye on. He actually runs better than R.J. Harvey. But and you could just make this point that anybody runs well against the Bills, and there is truth to that. But in general, I think I like this matchup X's and O's better. But how much are you thinking about the logistics right now, Luka?
A little bit. I mean, I saw someone out there, I can't remember who, I feel like it was someone of prominence, but they discussed how in the end it felt like three teams got the shaft with how the logistics of all of this worked out, and it feels a little bit unnecessary due to that. The Bills being one of them, as well as the Niners getting a short week in the later Saturday game. And then on top of it, one of the Sunday games being the winner of the Monday night, it gets a short rest. And there was a way to do it. There was a better way potentially to do it. So I don't necessarily subscribe too much into that. You're going to give the one seeds the shorter quote unquote week just due to that. And that's almost like a little bit of an added asterisk to why you're the one seed, a little bit more of an advantage. You got the bye week. Now you get the short rest on top of it for the opposition. That's fine. But that's just the way it's got to be. And it is what it is. That last statement I just made is kind of how I feel about it, though. Is like, hey, you want to play in these games. You deserved nothing more than the 6th seed to get here. You then won your road playoff game in the wild card to be in this position. You take the game for what it is. You don't concern yourself for it, and you just go in there and do what you can as best as you can. That is the reality of this situation. And if you wanted to have something different, you could have maybe not lost by double digits to Miami mid-season. You could have not choked away a game that felt very winnable against the Patriots week 5. There were opportunities. You could have hit that 2-point conversion, not that it actually mattered at all, against the Eagles. There were things you could have done to potentially get a different scheduling outcome and logistic outcome for this divisional round than where you currently are. So that is just the reality. When it comes to the matchup, though, I do feel as great as you do. Honestly, the one difference I will say that I keep thinking about is Denver's offensive line is definitely better than the Jaguars' offensive line. So that's one where I don't believe in RJ Harvey at all as someone that can gash the Bills on the ground and everything like that. But they definitely are set up to better control the line of scrimmage from an offensive line standpoint than I believe the Jags were. One, because the Jags were down their starting left tackle, who was effectively their best offensive lineman going into that game anyways, for one. But then two, just across the board, they weren't nearly as good. I mean, Bowles, Manners, McGlinchey, those are all very, very, very good, respected offensive linemen at their positions doing the jobs that they do. That I have a little bit of concern with that, just because that is kind of a mismatch in the sense of quality versus quality. And if you then are able to control the line of scrimmage, maybe you can kind of churn out a run game, even if you are deficient in the running back position itself. I outside of that little caveat, I do feel a kind of an inkling better now than I did going into that Jags game. And I will say I was pretty confident in that Jags game, especially when it comes to getting to that down 4 situation with 4 minutes to go. Felt like that was inevitable, and there we were, and here we are. So, yeah, I'm feeling good about this overall, and the logistics of it all is just kind of does it suck a little bit? Sure, but you want to play in this divisional game, and you take it for what it is. It's just the nature of the beast.
We have what I think is a Broncos fan in chat saying, stop saying it's a small D line. This is including Benito and Cooper, who are not in the game during rundowns. Well, they are in the game during rundowns. They a third of their snaps this year. They had over 200 run defending snaps apiece this season. And that's the overall point is, yeah, I mean, if the Bills are going to come out before the snap and say, hey, Denver, we're going to run, so you might want to go ahead and match up personnel, then cool. But that is the bind that the Bills' heavy personnel package puts you in is how do you match up with Kincaid? How do you match up with Knox? And quite honestly, Luka, if the Bills are signing up for a scenario where Benito and Cooper are off the field while we have Kincaid and Knox on the field with Hawes, okay, take 2 of your best players off the field. Let's see what happens. Although they are getting Drake Greenlaw back, although Sharon seems like a Broncos fan that's not quite as pleasant. So we're going to just ignore her. She's having a rough day. Let's see what Roy Collins had to say. The way I look at all the points that concern people about this game, if the Bills play better during the regular season, exactly. That's exactly the point Luka just made. I agree, Roy. That really has been the story of the Bills since they've become an upper echelon AFC team in 2020 is they lose just enough games to not give themselves a chance at a bye. And, some of that is they've gotten the 2 seed twice. And, unfortunately in 2020 is the first year we saw the 2 seed not get a bye. But yeah, you go to Miami and take care of business, or you go to Atlanta and don't lose to Michael Penix, or, you don't lose to Davis Mills. You're not in this position. So here's the position you're in. Is it ideal? No, but you still have the best player in the world. Okay, so we heard a lot of this last week. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I really respect Kay Adams. I think she does a fantastic job. I'm a little bit of a homer there because she started off her broadcast career, I believe, broadcasting out of St. Louis. So I've actually seen her multiple times, like at Cardinal games. And, she had no idea who I was, but, anytime I would like chat with her at Cardinal games, she was super friendly. I like her football takes, but she's the latest national football person to say there's no excuse for the Bills not to win the Super Bowl, while also predicting that the Broncos win this game. So my question is, how can those two statements be true? If you can look at a matchup as a football expert, as somebody who breaks it down professionally and say, I'm looking at these two teams, I think that this team is going to win, but there's no excuse for the other team to not only not win, but also not win the next two games as well. I just feel like what's happening with the national media right now, Luka, is there's this thought that the fans are missing Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, and now the Eagles are out and they're a polarizing team, and there's no Cowboys who always draw the interest. The Packers are out, and they're trying to get in front of Josh Allen eventually losing and having 2 or 3 days worth of what does this do for his legacy? Because any other year, it's like, okay, exactly when Lamar loses, the next day or two of content is Lamar a fraud? Is this going to hurt his Hall of Fame case? Where does he rank in the stupid conversations that don't mean anything, but they go on over national TV. And I just think right now, maybe outside of Stafford, who already has a ring and might get an MVP very shortly, there's just not a lot of legacies on the line in this tournament. Caleb Williams' legacy is certainly not on the line. Sam Darnold, I think, probably needs to prove he can win a playoff game. But, I mean, Brock Purdy went and won in Philly. So I think he's all right if he loses. Josh Allen really is the guy that these national talk shows need to either lose or get over the hump. And I think that's the reason why it continues to be front and center. I was just a little disappointed to see Kay Adams hop on the train there. Luka, does it irritate you at all?
No, not even remotely. People just want to create and set up narratives. And I will say a lot of that kind of talk and conversation is truly in a vacuum, right? It's singularly focused, blinders on. Hey, I am just looking at the Bills. I'm not even looking at their upcoming opponent. I'm not looking at their path. I'm not looking at any of it outside of the noteworthy, hey, the Chiefs aren't here anymore and things like that. Like, the known thing that they would be discussing, where the conversation piece shifted from, well, you got to get by Mahomes. Well, because you don't in this case. Now it's, well, there's no excuse then. But there are things, and you hear all of these same individuals talk about how this Bills team is just not good enough. It's the roster is not good enough. The team built around Josh Allen is not good enough. And that in turn is why when they look at the matchup itself and want to select a side and do the things that they want to do, they in turn select the Broncos and respect. Like, it is a team sport. That's the funniest part of this whole Josh Allen conversation is you as soon as you acknowledge that, you hurt the argument that you initially are trying to have about Josh Allen, because as any NFL alum will tell you, as anyone that knows ball, things like that, anyone that's been in those circles, it's like, no, it takes 11 men on a side of a line of scrimmage to successfully operate a play and or shut something down if you're on the defensive side. And it takes the entire collective that is the team on that day to get the result. That's why, the classic argument is quarterbacks wins and losses a quarterback stat. The answer to anyone with logic and understanding of the sport would most likely say no. There are still the people that want to kind of absolutely perch themselves on the yes, it takes the quarterback to win and lose. But it's one of those things where I couldn't care less how people stand on that kind of stuff. It almost makes then those conversations a little bit silly. I don't know. It's just one of those things where you can live in both spaces if you really want, but I just hope those people, when they do those kinds of things, understand what they're doing to their own argument, I guess is the way I would put it. It's, if you believe this team has no excuse to lose and not make a Super Bowl, but then in turn you acknowledge that their roster might not be good enough and choose them to lose against a very good Denver team, you are already defeating your argument that, well, there is an excuse. It's that the roster's not good enough to make that Super Bowl run, even though they do have Josh Allen. That almost describes how inexcusably frustrating as it is as a fan and anyone else watching this, that this is the roster put together around Josh Allen. And yet, thank God he is, he can be as superhuman as he is and overcome all the deficiencies that do exist with this roster. So, yeah, it's just a whole, loop of things that the conversation is silly. And if people want to perch on it to set up whatever they want to do in the national media, the local media, your friends, around the corner, whatever it is, so be it. Let them live in that space. It's a little bit silly of a circular argument. That's all.
I like Caleb's point here too. It's very hard to win this trophy. Just think of the games last weekend. If the Bills or the Niners or the Bears or the Rams go on to win this Super Bowl, just think of how close they were all to losing last week. Imagine if Trevor Lawrence's knee doesn't go down, his shin doesn't go down on that fourth down play and they go up 14-3. Mm-hmm. Or if, the Eagles were driving down, looking at the end zone before they ultimately threw the incomplete pass. The great catch by Colby Parkinson, not Devontae Adams or Puka Nacua, but Colby Parkinson. And, you have to win these eyelash battles. And it's almost like you need 4 flips of the coin to go your way. It's not that simple. The team behind me here, the Denver Nuggets, they won a NBA championship believing that their best formula was keeping games close and winning in clutch time. I do think that was part of the Chiefs' formula during their run of we have Kelsey, we have Andy Reid, we have Chris Jones, we have Mahomes. When it comes down to it, when it's like the last 4 minutes and we're tied, we like our guys over your guys. And, I do think in that regard that the Bills are going to have an advantage over anybody they play. But I don't know. We have this Bills wide receiver situation. And one snarky way you could look at it is the Bills have so many injuries at wide receivers now that they're being forced to play the guys that Brandon Beane was so proud of this offseason. Curtis Samuel and Keon Coleman. But I think Curtis Samuel's interesting because for him, it's about availability. I don't think it's about ability because we've seen him make plays against this very same Broncos team last year in the playoffs. He made plays against the Chiefs in the playoffs. It's just he comes back for a game or two and then goes away for 2 months. That's the issue with Curtis Samuel. If he's fully healthy, that's not nothing to me. Keon Coleman is the big one. And this is where I'm at with Keon Coleman, Luka. You and I have made our thoughts pretty clear on him. I think we liked him enough as a prospect. We didn't buy into the 40 time. We liked some of his college tape. His open field skills are fantastic. But, I think we're starting to all learn together that there's a maturity issue going on with him. And he maybe isn't as professional as you'd like a guy to be that's, being paid by an NFL football team. If this situation doesn't motivate him to get all of his ducks in a row, then you never have to ask yourself if he's the guy again. The Bills will learn everything they possibly need to know about Keon Coleman this next game or this next stretch of games, however many they have. And it's not just about does Keon go out and have, 6 catches for 80 yards on Pat Surtain. That would be silly. But does Keon show up to all the meetings? Does Keon run the for the love of the game routes that we saw Shavers and Gabe Davis just super fast get winded on to draw coverage deep? Does he do his 1/11th on plays when he's not getting the ball? Because that has also been all over his film. If he starts doing that, then I think we can start to get a little excited about him again. But if that's still absent from his game, given this career mulligan he's been given to revive his career because he's all that the Bills really have left, then he's never going to be worth it anyway. And let's just get him out of here for whatever we can get.
Keon, to me, has an opportunity that even is greater than and more set up for either success or failure than what I thought happened and took place for Kaiir Elam last year in the AFC Conference Championship game. You are in a position now to finally show this team, make or break, are you worth the shit in a game that matters? Are you worth your weight in gold? Do you want to be here? Can you make the plays when you need to make the plays? Because this is that time and this is the moment. Do you care enough to be on this team and be a part of what we're trying to do here or not? And as we learned in the AFC Conference Championship game last year, Kyrie Elam absolutely was not capable of doing anything at all. And he was very shortly shipped out of town for scraps. And just the reality was, hey, buddy, get out of here. We now see you're not worth it. Keon pretty much has the same thing going on, but in respect to Kyrie Elam, it was a by the fire situation of injuries were happening in the game. Now you're getting thrown into it. Keon's getting prepared for this. The Keon has the opportunity to go through an entire week of game planning and him understanding what his role will be going into kickoff, that there is truly no excuse for it anymore. It's, do you have that dog in you? Do you care enough to be here? And do you care enough to be part of that 111th that is the offense and do the things you need to do for 17? Because I think the other part of this too is on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, special teams, everything like that. I think we heard multiple individuals after last week's game talk about how they saw what Josh Allen was doing through all of the injuries and adversity and all of the things going on in that game. And he didn't blink. He didn't, kind of come down to earth a little bit. He just maintained that high level of play that he does in the playoffs. And that almost boosted them up and made them understand the expectations that are here as a Bill in the playoffs. It's like, you got to give it your all. You got to do everything. You got to finish through the plays. That is the culture that has been established here. And I'm saying the word culture because it's absolutely deserved. It's like, that's the culture that's been built and instituted in this locker room. That is what McDermott has done. That is what Josh Allen has also led by. And that's what the expectation is for everyone else around. And you saw those things out of Shavers, out of Gabe Davis, you see it out of Shakir and so on and so forth, that it's like, even when Curtis Samuel is out there, you can pick apart certain things about his game or the availability aspect, but when he is available and he's asked to do the gadget plays or whatever else it was in the past, he would do those things. Keon is the only caveat in this equation where it's like, there is enough tape out there. There's enough of a look out there where you go, does this guy actually give a shit? Does this guy want to be here? Because yes, he's just kind of out there. If he knows it, whatever the play call is, absolutely will not involve him in any capacity. He will not put in effort that's worth the shit. And that is huge when it comes to a defense recognizing that, can even set it aside and do whatever they want to do. And you now need to, if you're Keon and want to be here and want to win a championship with this team or do whatever with this team, you need to show that you care and give a shit. And you have the greatest opportunity to do so on the biggest stage you could possibly ask for. So, this is make or break, in my opinion, for Keon. If God forbid, and I obviously don't hope for this because it would most likely mean that there was a negative outcome to this game or even the next game, if there is one, so on and so forth, is if we see Keon just not step up to the plate and do what is asked about him, it would not surprise me in the slightest if, once the offseason began before the draft, you see Keon get moved on for whatever is out there possibly, because at that point in time, you saw on the biggest stage and the biggest moment and whatever it is that he's still not willing to put through that effort. And if you are a team that's building something, what more do you want out of a player than the baseline is giving a shit and giving your all when everything is on the line? That is the core of what you're trying to accomplish there. There's nothing else that matters in this sport more than winning and winning in the biggest moment. So if you can't even get up and do your job, play in, play out at that time, why else do you feel like you are deserving to be here anymore? That is the reality of Keon's situation.
And the reality of his opportunity is these are called the money games for a reason, because we've seen players like James Starks, UB product, who goes on a 4-game heater for the Packers where he accounts for over 400 yards of total offense and is one of the best weapons on the team en route to the Packers Super Bowl championship over Pittsburgh. And that guy is a legend in Green Bay. We've seen Joe Flacco throw for over 1,200 yards in a playoff run, have 11 touchdowns with 0 interceptions, and get paid like a franchise quarterback, despite all the evidence all prior to that he wasn't a franchise quarterback. If Keon Coleman puts together a 1, 2, or 3 game stretch here where he looks like a go-to guy. He looks like a playmaker. He's doing the little things and starts doing some of the big things. It's going to be all forgiven what happened because nobody's going to care about being benched in your rookie year in a September game against Jacksonville. If you go to Denver and you're matched up against Riley Moss and you put up 7 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. Do I predict that to happen? Absolutely not. But I do think from a matchup standpoint, if you're the Broncos, there's no world where you're putting Pat Surtain on Keon Coleman. I think you're either putting Pat Surtain on Brandon Cooks or you're putting Pat Surtain on Dalton Kincaid. And then you're going to let the chips fall where they may. And then Riley Moss is the guy that you attack in this secondary. He's no, I'm going to go into Stephen A. Smith mode here. He's no scrub, but like when Stephen A. Smith clearly doesn't know what he's talking about, he's like, oh, he's no scrub, but we understand that. But Riley Moss is who you want to attack because he's not an Avenger level quarterback that can just erase your best player. So there are going to be times where Josh Allen throwing a fade or a back shoulder fade to Keon Coleman might be his best option. Keon comes down with a couple of those. I mean, he can flip the narrative on him very, very quickly. And what an opportunity for a guy who has had about as disastrous of a start to his career, absent significant injury, to turn it all around by just doing the right things and being the player that he thinks he is. And it's all in front of him. All right, Luka, it's prediction time. Bills and Broncos, Saturday, 4:30. What do you think about the Saturday at 4:30 slot?
Kind of like it, honestly. I like that it's kind of get it out of the way. And in the same regard, it's the shortest possible turnaround for the Broncos as well. When you talk about logistics, where it's like they don't even get the feel of someone else playing in the playoffs yet before they have to get out there. Whether it's right before their game, they see that, let's call it Seahawks, Niners is on, and or they got to enjoy a day of divisional playoff before then they stepped on the field. It's like, no, you got to get going now. The Bo Nix is sitting there, and all he's got to think about, obviously all week and things like that, is the last time he was in this position, he was going to Western New York and he got his absolute ass whooped. So overall, I don't hate it for all of intents and purposes for a personal logistic reason, beyond the fact that it might create an awkward home handoff situation with the baby. But that is a minor thing, and we will see how that goes, and we will manage through it because my wife will be at the Sabres game that afternoon, and it's just a tight turnaround for the Bills game at 4:30. So we'll figure that one out personally, but I like it from a Bills fandom aspect, in the sense of at least you're just kind of going out there. You don't have to sit on your nerves. You don't have to sit on even seeing a game and doing that. And the Broncos don't get that to ease in. It's like, no, the time is now and you get to do it. And either you get the win and you get to enjoy the rest of the weekend as a fan, and or you get the loss and you can kind of just ignore the rest of the weekend as a fan-ish.
Yeah, that's very real. And that sucks. I think last week's game was perfect because you got to enjoy all the Saturday games, but you don't have to wait all through Sunday. You just get it out of the way, and then it's like, all right. Boy, that Niners Eagles game was just like, I mean, put my feet up, barely kind of watching on and off, just enjoying basking in the glow of the Bills win. All right, Bills and Broncos. Last I checked, the Bills were again a 1.5 point favorite. I think it really depends on what book you're looking at this point in time. We know the injuries, we know the 6-day rest, we know the thin air. We know how people are saying no excuses. Josh Allen has to win. What happens, Luka, in Denver on Saturday?
So in Denver, I think there's a weird situation that's brewing in Denver. And what I mean by weird is I think this will be, the conversation can be Knicks versus Allen. It can be a lot of things. If you had to ask me what these coaches want to do, it is make sure their quarterbacks have to do as little as possible in this matchup. And the situation is present where, in turn, what you do to take it out of your quarterback's hand or not lean on them as nearly as much is to then lean on the running game. And that feels like a great way to attack the team you're playing against. You're in a situation where it's like your offensive line should be able to dominate the line of scrimmage, allow yourself to enforce the run game down the opposing team's throat, and ultimately control the game to your best ability. And what I think is funny is we're going to probably, first and foremost, my best bet of this game is 46.5 right now. Love the under. I just think this is a game that you could be sitting there after about an hour and 10 of real time and you go, wait a second, there's only 4 minutes left in the first half right now. Like that is, I genuinely believe that could be the case. That is one. And I will say that does go a little bit against the trend because the referee, for what it's worth, does favor. You want the Bills to be a dog, by the way. He does love road dogs in the playoffs. But then, too, he does favor the over because he's a little bit penalty happy, especially on the offensive side of things. Defensive side of things. So he helps the offensive side of stuff. But I just feel like these two teams are going to try to control things as much as possible. Everything from a Sean Payton and Denver perspective tells them that they need to try to keep Josh Allen off the field, of course, and do all the things you need to. And on top of it all, like, keep the ball out of Bo Nix's hands from tough decisions to be made, because Bo Nix has shown on numerous occasions that if you are starting to lean on him and make him make tough decisions, the outcome will not be the greatest half the time, we'll call it, if not more. So from there, I just think this game fuels the Bills and everything they want to do a little bit more, where control the game, both sides, keep it close. And then once you get to that crunch time, like you even brought up, the Chiefs love to do in their formula of success, it's a tight game late. Now it becomes a little bit more of a Bo Nix versus Josh Allen. And if you think I'm going to sit here and say I believe Bo Nix is going to get the win over Josh Allen, you are absolutely insane. The 9th-year senior that is Bo Nix, now playing his second ever playoff game, is not going to go head-to-head with Josh Allen and win a game in clutch time, especially when it feeds into the hand that is a McDermott and Babbage defense. I will take the Bills here to win a game 20-13. I just think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be slow in the sense of not a lot of explosives and big plays, but fast in the sense of both sides are going to control the line of scrimmage a lot and just kind of milk that clock down to crunch time. And, just a couple key moments in the game when it comes to Josh Allen being able to maybe convert 1 or 2 third and longs, whereas Bo Nix was not able to, will be the end result of this game. So yeah, I'll take Bills 20-13 and kind of a weird one. And overall, I think we'll be happy once again with a Bills win going into yet another AFC Championship appearance.
Well, you were pretty spot on with your opinion last week when you called Josh Allen down by 4 with 4 minutes left, leading a game-winning drive. Yeah, this is an interesting game. Bo Nix is strange. When you look at some of his best games this year, they were against some of his best opponents. Like, statistically, he did good against Jacksonville. There was a lot of empty calories because that game got out of hand and he got garbage time. But he went toe-to-toe with Jordan Love in a shootout and won. Yep. He played well in Indy. But the last 3 times we've seen him on the field, he was, the Broncos were getting run over by the Jaguars in their building. And then they had games against the Chiefs backups, and that game was a struggle. And they had games against the Chargers backups to win the 1 seed, and that game was a struggle until the end. So I think there's just a lot of concerns of were the Broncos kind of laying off the gas because they thought that it was going to be an easy win, or is this who they are? I do think Bo Nix is one of those players, maybe kind of like 2019 Josh Allen, where maybe he's better when there's chaos. Like if you're down by, if the Broncos find themselves in the 4th quarter down by 14 points with like 4 minutes left, I fully expect Bo Nix to go on a slice and dice touchdown drive, because at that point, throw caution to the wind, see it, throw it, do it, you're good. I think in that situation, that's where he kind of thrives. I don't know if playing within structure against a McDermott defense is necessarily going to be the best thing for him. I am concerned about the running game. If McLaughlin out touches Harvey, I think he's the better player. Every time they hand it to Harvey, I think we should say thank you. I am curious if the Bills deploy that 5-man rush with a delayed Dorian Williams blitzer. We saw him unleash it on Kansas City. We saw him unleash it on Jalen Hurts in the second half. I just think Bo Nix is the perfect quarterback to do that to, because he likes to use his legs to escape the pocket. Dorian Williams has been very good in that role, and I do think it's a way to kind of manufacture pass rush for a defensive line that hasn't been able to do that consistently enough. Okay, my prediction is the Bills win this game 23-20. And let's get romantic about it and call it a walk-off Matt Prater field goal against his old team. I think it'll be tough. I do think that it's kind of like my prediction last week, where I'm thinking that the Bills are going to be kind of in control of it the whole way, and then maybe the Broncos are down by 10 with like 2 minutes to go, and they score a touchdown but don't get the onside kick kind of deal, something like that. Who knows? Or maybe like I just said, maybe they tie it up and then Josh Allen drives down and Prater gets the go-ahead field goal. Who knows? But 23-20, I don't think it'll be a cakewalk by any means. I do think that the worst case scenario for the Bills, I mean, go figure, is falling behind by several scores, because if the Broncos can make the Bills one-dimensional, especially passing with this receiver group, with that pass rush, boy, oh boy, that is less than ideal. As long as this game is close, it favors the Bills being able to go under center, run, pass, mix it up, and then be good. So Caleb says at max, the Broncos score 21. He says Bills are going to win 31-14. Love that energy. All right, Luka, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I mean, I will say I feel great about this game, and my prediction is what it is, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I would be shocked if they lose it, of course. It's always tough playing a 1 seed on the road, and in Denver, the most respectful thing I will give them, on top of everything that you could, is that is always a tough place to play. That is a very loud stadium. It's a true like towering bowl style that I honestly look forward to as a football fan, to enjoy the environment that will be that stadium. I'm curious how many Bills fans will be making that travel for this game. Just because I don't look at the Broncos as maybe being one that finds those tickets easy to get. I would imagine they all like to actually go to the game for one. Shots fired at other fan bases, but it's one that I will say I am very much looking forward to watching, just as a general football fan, for the environment itself as well. We didn't talk about that, but it deserves its own little note, because I think back to like when, Peyton Manning, of course, was there, but then you even look at like Tebow versus the Steelers. You look back to, I mean, as a kid, I've one of the first teams I used to watch was the Broncos, because Jake the Snake Plummer, an ASU quarterback, then went to Denver, and I loved watching them, and they were pretty good around then too. And I've just always had this little bit of enjoyment when it comes to the Broncos themselves. That I respect the environment, I respect that team and the fan base. That as a general football fan, I very much look forward to watching this game, and it's fun having Josh Allen and the Bills be involved in that for once.
An interesting fact about Jake the Snake Plummer, he's the first quarterback to ever beat Tom Brady in a playoff game.
It's a good one.
He'd won three Super Bowls before that, but then in 2005 they go to Denver and they lose. Yeah. So anyway, all right, Luka. Speaking of going to Denver, hopefully not losing, we will be back Sunday night, Monday morning, where all your podcasts can be found. Hopefully talking about a Bills win, but we'll be recapping Bills, Broncos, and everything else that's happened in Wild Card Weekend. Hopefully talking about an upcoming matchup in the AFC Championship game. And then I will be back on Saturday at halftime for Bills Chat Halftime Show. And then hopefully, Luka and I will be back next week to preview the AFC Championship game. And it's been a blast on Bills Chat Live this season. We are not going to say our goodbyes, because we expect to be in these seats next week. For Luka, I am Josh McCarty. Go Bills, go win, and we will see you next week on Bills Chat Live.